Good day everyone. Today we're going to discuss about World Trade Organization, also known as WTO. World Trade Organization was established in 1995 and the result of 8 years of GATT negotiations. The World Trade Organization is the successor of the General Agreement on Tariff and Trade, an international organization created in 1947 in the wake of Second World War for the purpose of reducing trade barriers in multilateral negotiations. The World Trade Organization is the only international organization dealing with the global rules of trade between the nations. Its main function is to ensure that trade flows as smoothly, predictably, and freely as possible. World Trade Organization objective is to implement the new World Trade System as visualized in the agreement, promoting the world trade manner that will benefit every country, increasing the level of productivity and production with a view of ensuring the level of employment, reviewing the national trade policy of member nations and to ensure the transparency of the trade policies, and extending assistance in developing least developed and low-income countries in the transition to adjust to the World Trade Organization rules and discipline through cooperations and trading.
I am Rizal Madera and here are the another functions of WTO. Negotiating the reduction of elimination of obstacles to trade and agreeing on rules governing the conduct of international trade. Assisting the process of accession of some 30 countries who are not yet members of the organization. Cooperating with other international organizations, IMF and the World Bank. World Trade Organization coordinate with its secretariat, which employs 500 plus staff, including economists, lawyers, and other experts in related area of concern. The WTO's agreement are the result of negotiation between the members. The current set were the outcome of the 1986 to 1994 Uruguay Round negotiation, which included a major revision of the original General Agreement on Tariff and Trade, or GATT. The WTO oversees about 60 different agreements which have the status of international legal text. They deal with agriculture, textiles, clothing, banking, telecommunication, government purchase, industrial standards, product safety, and more. Agreements and policies. In goods, it all began with trade in goods from 1947 to 1984. GATT was the forum for negotiating lower customs, duty rates, and other trade barriers. In services, these principles appear in the new General Agreement on Trade in Services. Intellectual property. The WTO's Intellectual Property Agreement amounts the rule for trade and investment in ideas and creativity. Dispute settlement. The system encourages countries to settle their differences through consultants. My last topic is about the WTO agreements related to TRIMS. Trade-related investment measures does not provide any new language, but it does concentrates on two major articles, Article 3 and Article 11, which talks about national treatment and trade restriction respectively. Article 3 deals in national treatment of imported products unless it's specified in other agreements. Subjects the purchase or use by an enterprise of imported products to less favorable conditions than the purchase or use of domestic product. Article 11. Prohibition of quantitative restriction on imports and exports, part of the general trend in textiles and agriculture to phase out the use of quantitative restrictions.
Hi everyone, I am Shatim B. Ramirez, studying at the University of Makati under the College of Business and Financial Science with our College Dean, Dr. Bernie Balmeo, completing the subject course of Global International Trade under Professor Amadeo Lanuza. Now I'm sharing with you guys ideas from the World Trade Organization or how it works. First is the members of the World Trade Organization. The current members of the WTO is 159 countries while there are still 24 countries who are not members. These non-members are known as observers. as they are still negotiating their membership in the World Trade Organization. Our country, Philippines, has been able to accede in the World Trade Organization since the year 1995, same year since the World Trade Organization has started. While the latest country who have joined the organization was Afghanistan in the year 2016 of July. Covering over 3/4 of the World Trade Organization, members are developing or at least developing countries. However, you may think negatively of these terms, but in reality it holds us its advantage because the organization gives an assistance to those countries until they can fully implement the agreement. Topic number 3. In line with the voting principles of the World Trade Organization, their primary aim is a consensus or an agreement, but if it is not with consensus, majority vote will take place, 1 vote per member. In their interpretation of agreement, also one of the voting principles of the organization, according to their rules, the agreement will be interpreted in an ordinary meaning and will be happen if 3/4 of the member favors. Number 3 principle, amendment agreements. Another voting principle that means changing of terms in the existing agreement, either removing, adding, or changing the obligation and benefits will also happen if 2/3 of the members favors. Lastly, voting principle is the proposed amendments that will be decided by the countries and council decision. Now let us move on to the core principles of the World Trade Organization. Topic 4. The organization has been good to its members, giving them reception they should receive with a fair and just treatment, believing to their core principle. Those core principles are: number 1, free trade. Gradually, through negotiation, can lower the trade barriers like tariffs and custom duties like quotas and restriction that sets the limit of possible quantities to be imported. Number 2, predictability. Through binding and transparency, because the promise of lowered barriers gives business a clearer view of their future opportunities. Their one way of improving predictability is discouraging quotas, like what I've said. Quotas are the custom duties that sets the limits of the quantities to be imported. Number 3 core principle is more competition. By discouraging unfair practice such as export subsidies and dumping products at below cost to gain market share, the business is getting more competitive. Number 4 core principle of World Trade Organization is more beneficial for less developed countries. Since developing countries needs time and flexibility to adjust to the organization rules and regulations, they have given assistance to them and give them time to understand and adapt to the World Trade Organization provisions. So, this is the end of my discussion.
Hi, my name is Rondin James U. Waques from University of Makati, taking BSBA, major in Human Resource Development Management. Today, I am going to discuss to you the WTO agreements. First is the Sanitary and Phytosanitary Agreement or SPS Agreement. SPS Agreement was negotiated during the Urungai Round and entered into the force with the establishment of the WTO in 1995. The WTO sets constraints on member states' policies relating to the food safety like bacteria contaminants, pesticide, inspection and labeling, as well as animal and plant health in imported pets and diseases. The next WTO agreement is AOA or the Agreement on Agriculture. The Agreement on Agriculture came into effect with the establishment of WTO at the beginning of 1995. The AOA has 3 central concepts or pillars: the domestic support, market access, and export subsidies. The objective of this agreement is to reform trade in agriculture and to make more policies to make the market more oriented. Third WTO agreement is the Anti-Dumping Practices or ADP. A product is considered to be dumped if the export price is less than the price change for the same product in the exporting country, or it is sold for less than its cost of production. The WTO agreement on anti-dumping allows government to act against dumping where there is genuine material injury to the competing domestic industry. WTO and India. After Marrakesh Agreement, India joined WTO since inception in 1995. Developing countries like India availed of greater trade opportunities and also challenged certain policies of developed countries. For India, exposure to volatile international market would affect not only domestic prices but also income of poor. India aimed to participate in WTO rule-based system with greater stability, transparency, and predictability and governance of international trade. Positive impact on Indian economy. First, increase in export earnings, agricultural exports, export of textile and clothing, multilateral rules and discipline, growth to service exports, and foreign investments. Conclusion. Although the stated aim of WTO is to promote free trade and stimulate economic growth, some believe that globally trade result in rich both people and countries becoming richer while the poor getting poorer. Second is WTO will be able to help weak and poor countries if it frames rules accordingly.
So hello, my name is Cassie Esportas. I'm from 4HRDM and I will be discussing to you the WTO. So the WTO has different levels and consists of different agreements also. So what is WTO? So the WTO or World Trade Organization is run by its member governments. All major decisions are made by its membership as a whole, either by ministers, who meet at least once every 2 years, or by their ambassadors or delegates. Decisions are also made normally taken by consensus. So in this respect, the WTO is different from some other international organizations, such as the World Bank and International Monetary Fund. In the WTO, power is not delegated to a board of directors or organization's head. The WTO, when the WTO rules, impose disciplines or countries' policies that is outcome of negotiations among WTO members. The rules are enforced by its members themselves under agreed procedures that they negotiated, including the possibility of trade sanctions. But those sanctions are imposed by countries and authorized by the membership as a whole. This is quite different from other agencies whose bureaus can, for example, influence a country policy by threatening to withhold credit. So reaching decisions by consensus among 150 members can be so difficult. Its main advantage is that decisions made this way are more acceptable to all members. And despite the difficulty, some remarkable agreements have been reached. Nevertheless, proposals for creation of a smaller executive body, perhaps like a board of directors, each representing different groups of countries, are held periodically. But for now, the WTO is a member-driven, consensus-based organization. So we have 4 levels. So the first level is the highest authority. So the highest authority is what we call the Ministerial Conference. So the WTO belongs to its members. The countries make their decisions through various councils and committees, whose memberships consist of all WTO members. The topmost is the Ministerial Conference, which has to meet at least once every 2 years also. The Ministerial Conference can take decisions on all matters under any multilateral agreements. So the second level that we have is the General Council. in three guises. Day-to-day work in between the ministerial conferences is handled by its three bodies. So the first body is the General Council. The second is the Dispute Settlement body. And third, the Trade Policy Review body. So all the three are in the agreement establishing the WTO. And it states that they are all the General Council, although they meet under different terms of reference. Again, all three consist of all WTO members, and they report to the Ministerial Conference. The General Council acts as on behalf of the Ministerial Conference on all WTO affairs. It meets as the Dispute Settlement body and the Trade Policy Review body to oversee procedures for settling disputes between members and to analyze members' trade policy. So the next will be the third level. So the third level would be the council for each broad area of trade and more. So three more councils, each handling a different broad area of trade, report to the General Council. So the first one is the Council for Trade in Goods, or so what we call Goods Council. The second would be the Council for Trade in Services, or the Services Council. And the third, the Council of Trade-Related Aspects of Intellectual Property Rights, or PRIPS Council. So as their names indicate, the three are responsible for the working of the WTO. Agreements dealing with the respected areas of trade. Again, they consist of all WTO members. So lastly is the fourth level, or down to the nitty-gritty. Each of the higher levels has subsidiary bodies. The Goods Council has 11 committees dealing with specific subjects, such as agriculture market access, subsidies, anti-dumping measures, and so on. Again, this consists of all member countries. Also, reporting to the Goods Council is the Textile Monitoring Body, which consists of chairman and 10 members acting in their personal capacities, and groups dealing with the notifications. Governments informing the WTO about the current and new policies, measures, and trading enterprises.